episode 3 of the Big at the Back podcast. I'm Tom. I'm joined by Matt. Matt, how are you?
Not too bad, thanks. My throat is still a little bit hoarse from my weekend antics in Benidorm, which is why the podcast is a little later this week, because I had no working voice for the first half of the week. But yeah, I've just about recovered. How are you?
We had our big work Christmas party on Thursday, and I lost my voice from Friday. Christmas, summer. Still recovering, evidently.
You gave your Christmas party in early this year.
I lost my voice from the Friday all the way up until the Monday, and Tuesday morning it was still dodgy, and I was bricking it because I had a big company presentation to do on Tuesday for the whole company. Now, pitching big deals to big clients, totally fine. Presenting internally to the company, terrible experience. Never going to do that again.
Yeah, because they're people you know and see every day. So it's like, if you make a fool out of yourself, you're going to get ripped for the rest of your working life there, and you'd probably just have to quit.
Exactly. I mean, I'm sure I'd be doing a lot of people a favor if I did. Let's be honest.
Yeah, true.
Nonetheless, we are here to talk about FPL, and we're in the swing of things. We're getting things going. We're prepping for the new season. So we are going to do round 2 of our season preview. Now, the first round, you can catch last week's podcast. We did every team from Arsenal to Fulham in alphabetical order. So the first 10 teams. This week, we're going to be doing Liverpool to Wolverhampton Wanderers. So going through each team, talking about their strengths, weaknesses, top FPL assets, and the people we have our eyes on. Matt, what do you think? Anything else to add before we dive in?
No, let's crack on. And I feel like I'll throw the door open for you, because the first team this week is your beloved Liverpool.
So I've got an awful lot to say about Liverpool. So I actually think it will be better, before I set the narrative, for you to open this discussion.
Okay, fair enough. Well, obviously, you've made a couple of big signings, McAllister being the main one that sort of transforms your side, because obviously you've lost half of your central midfielders, mostly to Saudi Arabia. So obviously he is the big one so far. Whether you get another one in to fill another one of those holes is yet to be seen. We've still got about 9 days until the Premier League season starts, which is just mental. So yeah, I think he's going to be an interesting one to keep an eye on. Szoboszlai, or Szoboszlai, however you pronounce his name, also coming in. He looks like a good player. But obviously the main contenders from an FPL perspective are going to be the same names that we see coming up every year. You've got your Salah, you've got your Trent, probably not so much your Robertson this year. And then these people are going to be looking at like the extra one of like Darwin or Diaz or Gakpo, and where they go with that third option, because I feel like a lot of people will be going with 3 Liverpool assets into the start of the season.
Yeah, I agree with that. I actually think when you're looking at Liverpool, it becomes a big, big decision in terms of what strategy you're going to be going into the season with. So I think option 1, you can look at getting Trent Alexander-Arnold in your team, which means that you're likely to go without Salah, but to cover for him, you can go with Diaz or Darwin Nunez, both of which have looked very good in pre-season, or both. Option 2 is to actually go with Salah, and we can get onto why that's just more than justifiable in a minute. But then you go without Trent, and actually to cover for Trent, I think Virgil van Dijk is a better option than Andrew Robertson. He played 2 fewer games than Trent last season, only was off him by 29 FPL points. So, and Trent and Virgil, there's not that much between them. Virgil van Dijk had a poor season last season, but his price reflects that. He's 6 million in FPL, which is the cheapest he's been in a while. So I think the strategic options are you can go Trent or Salah, and that's how you structure your team. Unfortunately, because we're all spending 14 million on Haaland, it's ridiculous to assume you can get both Salah and Trent in the same team. So for me, it's either one or the other, and that's going to dictate what you do with Liverpool assets.
Or you could do what my current 11 is and have neither of Salah or Trent.
That's genuinely idiotic.
Well, yeah. But, I mean, to be fair, I'm looking at my team now. I'm like, I don't like any of this. So it's going to be changing a lot before the start of the season.
The reality is Salah or Trent, either one of them, whichever one you don't have, you're going to be watching them every week because either one is going to be a complete game week killer for you. You're either going to be delighted or you're going to be horrified by what happens that game week. Because if the other one does well, then it's going to hurt your rank because both are going to be so highly. I say highly owned. Salah's on about 25% ownership right now.
And Trent's on about 27.
But either way, it's going to significantly hurt you amongst the top players. I mean, you wouldn't know much about that given last season, though. So,
well, that's just fucking rude.
I'm sorry. You said you had no Trent or Salah in your team. You can't expect me to not take a swap.
Hey, what I will say about last season is I was the one that called early on. I was no Salah from the start. And for the first 2/3 of the season, that was a good shout.
How did that fare in game week 1 when he got 14 points?
Yeah, but how did it fare after that? I was laughing so hard when you put 9 past Bournemouth and he got nothing. I felt so smug.
You say that he was still by far and away the top scoring midfielder in FPL last season. And he has been for the past 5 seasons.
Underperformed his value, though.
Agreed. But he's been priced reflective of that. Last season, he was 13. This season, he's 12.5. I think he is still the best midfielder you can possibly own in the FPL game. And let's be honest, is there anyone that would back against him being the top scoring midfielder this season?
I would.
Oh, do you get the back bet coming?
Potentially.
Okay, we'll talk about that in our season predictions. But I think it's one or the other. I do think Virgil van Dijk's a shout. Darwin Nunez has looked brilliant in pre-season, as has Luis Diaz. Gakpo, interestingly, has been playing a bit deeper. I'm not interested in McAllister or Szoboszlai as FPL assets. They can be playing in the right or left of that midfield tree, behind the front tree. They're going to create space for the forwards and create a lot of opportunity for the forwards, but they're not going to necessarily get around sort of returns themselves. And at 6 and 7 million, they're no-goes for me.
Yeah, the two I have in my team at the moment are Darwin and Diaz. Just throwing them in there because why not? But as I say, I imagine a lot of this current draft will not be in my starting draft when I head into the season.
Yeah, I think the template is to go with Trent over Salah and have a more balanced team. I feel like it could be a bit more fun going against that template, though, and finding a way to get Mo Salah in the team, especially for game week 1 against Chelsea, but then game week 2 against Bournemouth. And Haaland's got a tough game. It could be that Salah's captain material.
That's the problem. That's the problem if you have Salah and Haaland. The captaincy debate just gets quite tricky. And then you're going to be going, which one do I do? And if you get it wrong, you're going to be kicking yourself. Whereas if you've got Haaland, and no Salah, it's just auto-captain Haaland every week.
That wasn't necessarily the correct move last season, though. He didn't get that many more points than Kane, for instance, last season.
No, but it was the obvious choice because Kane was more consistent across in terms because he scored in more games throughout the season. But how many times did you watch like Haaland just banged in a hat trick 2 games in a row, and you're like, oh well, if I've captained someone else that week, I feel like a right mug.
Game week 2, Man City have Newcastle at home. I think Haaland won't be the standout captaincy pick in that week.
I don't know. I think he will. I just can't see people backing against him, especially not early in the season, especially if he scores a hat trick against Burnley.
Yeah, I don't think I will be captaining Haaland that week. So I think that opens the door for Mo Salah having Bournemouth at home, and then Liverpool have got.
I think you're going to be captaining Brian Mbeumo that week, aren't you? Against Fulham.
I'm not having Brian Mbeumo on my starting team.
Do it.
Brentford looked terrible.
Yeah, they do look bad.
Without Raya, without Tony, I'm just completely off Brentford. I've taken all Brentford. I've taken Henry out. I'm not interested at all. So yeah,
You should captain a Luton player in week 2.
Who have Luton got in week 2? I don't think I'll be doing that. Luis Diaz scores in the last game against Bayern Munich, the friendly, and Darwin Nunez has been in great form in pre-season. He looks like, with McAllister and Szoboszlai, he's getting a lot more service and he's able to stay a lot more central. So assuming he's starting for Klopp, he's going to be dead set in my team. I'm really excited for Darwin this season. Aside from Haaland and assuming Kane leaves, I can't see anyone in the Premier League outscoring Darwin Nunez in goals this season.
Big shout.
Big shout, I know, but the only competition would arguably be Salah. Or maybe Rashford, but I think Darwin Nunez is going to score more.
Or if Rasmus Højlund comes into United as well. I know he's young and unproven, but he's if he's playing up top for a United side, he can't do any worse than Wout Weghorst, can he?
Don't you dare take him in vain. But I think Darwin Nunez, second season in the league, he knows what's expected of him now. Don't get me wrong, we'll talk about Man U in a minute because they are very, very investable as well. But I've got that real positive excitement about Darwin that I just completely didn't have last season. And in
that's going to end in tears, isn't it?
Well, he's been looking really good. He looks like he's learned English now, which is a big bonus. He can actually communicate with his teammates. He looks like he's understanding the players around him, which he didn't last season. He was just causing chaos all over the place, which we loved. But I'm very high on Darwin based on pre-season, and I think he's going to be in my team, at least for the start of the season.
Are you going to start making songs about him on TikTok and Instagram?
I feel like I would be the second best person doing that, so I can't be second best.
Mate, you're the second best male in your household.
I agree. Benny is the best. Shall we talk then about top 3 Liverpool assets?
Yeah, I guess it's hard to choose just 3, but for me, it's if you're looking just objectively at who you think is going to win the season with the most points.
Yeah, so we're looking at over the whole season based on their value. Who are the 3 best Liverpool assets?
It's probably Salah, Trent, and a coin toss between Darwin and Diaz for me.
I wouldn't have Diaz in there on the basis of I'm not certain he keeps Jota out of the team because Diaz is fantastic and probably Klopp's preferred choice, but Jota is sensational as well. And Diaz will often come off at 60 minutes, whereas someone like Salah, he's never coming off the pitch, especially with longer games now as well, which is another reason I think Salah is very, very tempting because he's never subs. So for me, it's Salah, then Trent, then a combination of Darwin and Van Dijk. I do think Van Dijk priced at 6 million is really, really attractive. And I'm really seriously considering going with a Salah team with Van Dijk instead of Trent Alexander-Arnold.
Interesting. Fair enough then. I think the next one's going to be a little bit of a shorter preview as we move on to the mighty Luton Town. So
if we're talking about Luton, we can only really talk about the 4.0 million defender, and that's who's the one that's starting? Is it Bell that's starting?
Or maybe.
Kabore is meant to be their new starting right back, I believe. They're the only ones I think I will possibly own, at least until there will be someone from a promoted club that comes to the fore, but we don't know who that is yet. So for now, it's Kabore or Bell as a 4.0 bench warmer, and that's the only place you can really go.
Yeah, I'm looking at things now, and I'm like, who are these guys? They signed Marvelous Nakamba from Aston Villa. Remember when he came in from was it Bruges or someone like that? People were like, he looks like he might be quite good, and then he never played. Yeah, it's just this is the sort of one you're going to get someone that's going to have some high ownership. Because they're like the doorway into a 2-pointer every week and just to kill space on your bench. And that is about all we can say about them.
Is there potential value? So Areola looks like in pre-season he's going to finally replace Fabianski as West Ham's starting goalkeeper. And Macy looks like he could be Luton's starting goalkeeper. So if you wanted a pair of rotating goalkeepers that were 4 million,
there's worse things to do, isn't there? I guess potentially a lot of save points when you're looking at these sorts of keepers.
You're going to start Areola most of the time, but the reality is you can just say goalkeeper is a position that's rubbish, that's objectively going to get the fewest points on the team. It does every season for every goalkeeper. Therefore, I'm going to spend the least amount of money I possibly can on it and spend my money elsewhere. In which case, I think there's value in just 2 rotating 4.0 keepers, or just 2 4.0 keepers and having Areola starting every game. So that's the only other argument I can make for a Luton player.
Yeah, potentially. Like you'd say in that situation, you'd say Areola would start most games. Then you look at like game week 5, West Ham have Man City and Luton have Fulham. So it'd just be you'd throw him in that week and see what happens. But yeah, I guess that's as much as you can really say about Luton, isn't it? Like, we're not going to give you any fucking real insight, let's be honest. We're not going to tell you anything you don't already know.
Let's move on to Man City then.
Don't know much about these either.
Very, very weird team on FPL. So Haaland is going to be in every team, 14 million, 272 points on FPL last season. Phenomenal player. He's number 1. Cancelo looks like he's going to Barcelona. Great. We've answered that question. Now, the question with Man City is, where else do you go?
I am interested to see, because it looks like they're going to sign Gvardiol from Leipzig. So what he comes in as, because you'd imagine he's going to be their new signee, like their big marquee signing, the new centre-half that's going to play every game. So if he comes in at a 5 or 5.5, you're probably thinking, right, he's a good door into the City defence if he's going to be playing every week, because you always have this, regardless of where around the pitch you were talking about with City, you're always worried about rotation. And then, again, you're paying Pep Roulette with the midfield, aren't you? De Bruyne is always probably the most likely to start. He's 10.5, which I think is a tempting price for me. If he's one of those players, isn't he? You know, if he gets on a run of form, he can punish you if you haven't got him. Yeah. He can go off. And, again, he's got another season with Haaland. They've had a season of getting to know each other. And they worked pretty well together last year. So if he can keep picking him out, who knows? He's the one that I could think could outscore Salah if he stays fit all season.
Interesting. So the way they've been lining up Man City in pre-season is Haaland through the middle, Foden on the left, and Alvarez on the right. So admittedly, Grealish hasn't been there, but it looks like that right-hand side...
Grealish is still drunk.
Probably. But it looks like that right-hand side is going to be between Foden and Alvarez seems to be the preferred pick. The problem with Manchester City is if you're looking at any of their defensive assets, not only are they not stable, but Man City spend the whole game attacking so much that the opposing team just needs to have a breakaway in the 88th minute and they'll score a goal. It happened time and time again, the clean sheet wipeouts over and over again last season. And then none of them are as safe as you think. So you're looking at Ederson, the premium keeper on FPL, 5.5 million. I know so many people have got him as the safe City defensive pick for the double game week at the end of last season. And then Stefan Ortega starts both games. So there is no safety in Manchester City. If you're looking at them defensively, John Stones was their top scoring defender, but only 7 clean sheets, 2 assists, 2 goals. Not going near him for 5.5. Same with any of the defenders. Not interested. Been there, done that. Been punished, never happening again. Ruben Diaz a few years ago was amazing, but not so much now. KDB, you're right, could really, really punish. Phil Foden, if he is starting and getting a run of games, then he's a potentially really good player. He's in my team at the moment, but I don't think he'll be staying there. I don't want to keep him. So it does really, really beg the question. If you're looking outside of Haaland, I think the place you want to go, Jack Grealish is a no-go as well. I think the place you want to go is Alvarez because he's more likely to start on that right-hand side next to Haaland, and he's in a striker spot.
I like how you're reading into City's potential plans by how they've been lining up in pre-season. You can't even read into how City are going to line up by how they lined up in their last 5 Premier League games, let alone their last 5 pre-season games.
So the Community Shield on Sunday will tell us a lot about Guardiola's plans.
But it won't. It won't.
But I'll say what it won't do. It won't change my mind because I will just be starting with Haaland and that's it. I will not have any other City players. I think That's the answer, right? Over the season, it's Haaland, it's KDB, and it's probably Foden, but it may be Alvarez. But you're only starting with Haaland. That's the reality of the situation.
Yeah, I mean, you'd like to think that they shore up defensively, and those 5 or 5.5 mids could actually be a real good bargain. Because you look at the way City dominate games, they should be keeping 20 clean sheets a season. But
that's the thing, though. They go so far forward. Rodri switches off, and then the opposition counter-attack and score a goal. 80-minute plus clean sheet wipeouts. It's what Manchester City are known for, and they don't start seasons well. They really come into their own in the second half of the season. They never start well, and they haven't on any of their majestic runs. The first part of the season is when they stutter. So I think you get Haaland, and that's it.
you're telling me you think Mateo Kovacic isn't going to completely change the way they play?
I'm not saying it's impossible, but I wouldn't
saying it's unlikely.
So yeah, with City, I'm hard on the just Haaland.
At least we won't have that point of this season where we're all like, oh, but Mahrez.
Oh, thank God. Thank God. So a really, really interesting FPL team to chat about then, moving on, is Manchester United.
Yeah, and we all know that you're going to be starting with Mason Mount in your side because you love him so much.
Mason Mount, Harry Maguire, Anthony. I just wish I could have more Man United.
They will be an interesting one this season. Rashford's still obviously down as a midfielder, playing off that wing, and the amount of goals the amount of points he racked up last season, and Bruno at an 8.5 is pretty damn cheap if he can pick up the form that he had in his first sort of 18 months in the Premier League. And obviously they've done quite a bit of business as well. Anana's come in as their new goalkeeper, which is quite an interesting one to watch. And as I say, if they do sign Rasmus Højlund, which all sort of signs are pointing towards, then they might finally have that marquee striker that people can pin their hopes on.
I'll be interested to see what he comes in at in FPL. Before we talk about that, though, I really want to chat about Luke Shaw because he racked up bonus points. He was really good, but I think he's just been priced out of the team this year at 5.5 million. And I'm saying this in relation to Onana coming in at 5 million. You can get a piece of that Manchester United defence that you know is probably going to get some bonus points in Onana for 5 million. Whereas if you look at Arsenal and their goalkeeper, Ramsdale or Raya, if he comes in at 5 million, you can buy into the Arsenal defence for 5 million and still get the bonus points and the goals threats with Gabriel and Saliba, etc., or Zinchenko. With Shaw being 5.5, I think you can buy into the same team and the same kind of idea for cheaper. So I just think he's ruled out, but he's a really interesting one. I'd love to get your perspective on it.
I think for me, if he plays as an out-and-out fullback, then he is tempting because he does get forward, he does get up there, and he does make things happen. If he's playing as that left centre half, then no way for me. If he was 5, I think he'd be in a heartbeat.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think they're pricing just too high because I'm looking at Shaw versus Ben Chilwell. If you're asking me who's going to get more points in FPL, I'm going Chilwell. Probably.
As long as he doesn't get injured for half.
Assuming they're both fit for the whole season, because that's what you've got to base it on. I think Chilwell would get more. Shaw versus Ben White, I'd probably be going Ben White. I just think in that price bracket, it's a little too much.
It's going to be tricky, isn't it? Because you say with Chilwell, for example, you don't know how a Poch team's going to play, like with a lot of new players and things like that. Shaw's more of your known entity in that one, but yeah, Ben White, it's probably a coin toss. I think it's one of those. It is just it's pretty 50-50. I don't know. Man U, they've got an all right start, but not the best. So I don't know. Whereas like an Arsenal, Ben White, they've got a really good run at the start of the season. So if it's a coin toss between those early on, you're probably going to go Ben White.
Yeah, I would say so. Man U, Wolves at home, Tottenham away, Nottingham Forest at home. So 2 out of those 3 are home fixtures against bottom of the table teams. So I just feel like it's a stretch too far for me. In terms of the midfielders, that's where it gets really interesting. Rashford at 9 million, Bruno Fernandes at 8.5. What was your reaction when you saw both of these?
I think they're both really good prices, really tempting. Rashford, we saw what he can do last season. He was devastating in that post-World Cup period. Bruno, although he obviously hasn't had his best couple of years, there's always that moment of magic in him. And if he does get a run going, 8.5, he will be very highly owned if he has a good game week in game week 1. Let's put it that way.
I totally agree. I'm on the completely same page. I think that I saw these prices and I thought Rashford at 9, that's about right. Bruno at 8.5, that feels underpriced to me. I feel like Bruno is just too good not to have at that price. He's on penalties. He's their best player. With a proper striker and actually finishing his chances, his million chances that he creates, he will mop up assists and bonus points. He'll probably do over 200 points this season. He's the one, I think, not KDB. I think he's got a better chance of scoring more than Salah this season on FPL.
Interesting. And it's also worth noting as well, he's the new captain. Now that Harry Maguire has been removed as captain. So that just even further cements his place in the starting 11. Not that we really needed it, because if he's fit, he plays.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think Bruno and Rashford, both great options. As a spoiler, they're both in my current draft. So
Whoa, no spoilers, Tom.
I know.
Hell, mate.
Pretty wild, I know. So I am a big fan of both. With Hoyland coming in, what do you think he's going to come in at? I think 7.5. It feels like a likely price point for me.
Yeah, I was going to say about that 7.58 mark. There's not really many strikers above the 8, is there? So if he was coming in at that, you'd be looking at comparing him to like Watkins, Tony, Jesus levels. And for an unknown quantity coming into the league who hasn't played that much football in his career, he's still very young. I think going any higher than 7.5 will be a bridge too far for people to be really tempted to bring him in. That being said, it's Man United. There will be a bit of a bandwagon coming in because people have been waiting for a United striker for years now to really hit the ground running and sort of take the lead by storm. Yeah, they haven't had one since Rooney.
Yeah, it's been a long time. I'm not sure that. God, who's been a Man U striker? Ibrahimovic. There you go.
He did all right when he came in, to be fair.
Yeah, I mean, but overall, yeah, I'm of the same kind of opinion, and I think if he comes in at 7.5, I will likely own him, and it'll make me turn my team upside down. So yeah, I'm very keen on the idea.
Who are your 3 then?
Because of the way he's priced, I think Onana has to be in there. So I think it's Bruno, then Rashford, then Onana. And they're actually the 3 that are in my team from United at the moment.
Yeah, I think it's the same 3 for me. Dependent on Holland's price when he does come in, he's also one that could be there or thereabouts, but he'd probably still be 4th choice. And I agree with Onana. I think coming in at 5 is a very good price.
Yeah, I just think it means you get a piece of the Man U defense that you know is going to be there at 5 million. It's a bit of a no-brainer for me.
So when you look at the other ones in that, like at that same price, like Jose Sarr, Ramsdale, you're not going to have an Arsenal keeper because he's just got better runs elsewhere. Martinez, not convinced really. Kepa, who maybe looks like he isn't even going to be their first choice now. Potentially you go David Raya if he's going to go in and take that number 1 shirt at Chelsea.
Potentially. But
you're not going on a fucking Spurs keeper, are you? Vicario or whatever his name is.
I'll tell you who could be a really fun option is Emi Martinez.
I don't know. I love him, but I can never get excited about him in FPL, despite the fact he's had some really good years. I'm just like, meh.
He's such a fun player. What are you talking about?
Martinez, I know, but I'm like, nah.
Oh, I disagree with you strongly.
Something about me, I think it's just Villa in general for me. I'm like, yeah.
I disagree with you, and I think under Unai Emery, brilliant manager and really good defensive manager as well. I think he could really, really do well in that price bracket. Regardless, let's move on to Newcastle. So, Newcastle top 4 last season, brilliant season. They've strengthened over the summer. They brought in Harvey Barnes from Leicester, and they brought in the new midfielder from AC Milan, whose name I can't remember off the top of my head.
Sandro Tonali.
That's the one, Tonali, who's meant to be really good. However, on FPL, for the start of the season, I'm struggling to see any temptation at all from Newcastle. I love Wilson, I love Isaac, but I'm just not going near either of them at the start of the season.
Yeah, I agree. And their fixtures aren't great either. Like none of their first 5 fixtures you look at and go, oh, that's a must-have. Villa, City, Liverpool, Brentford, Brighton and Brentford. Like they're all pretty tricky fixtures. Obviously, Trippier was like the template pick last season. He had a great first half of the season. Even he sort of fell away off a cliff towards the end of the season. Pope at 5.5 feels a bridge too far, a bit too expensive. Obviously, no big names coming in really that are going to be FPL. Like Tonali's a defensive midfielder, so you're not going to be bringing him in. Harvey Barnes, is he going to start? He probably goes into their side, but they've got a lot of options around that area, and he's 6.5, which, I don't know.
I do think with Newcastle, it's a wait and see, because after those 5 games you mentioned, the 5 afterwards are Sheffield United, Burnley, West Ham, Crystal Palace and Wolves. So that's when you start looking at moving on to Newcastle assets. But until game week 6, I think they're just, you leave them be. Over the course of the season, though, I do think Wilson was sensational, and I think again he will be their top point scorer on FPL. I mean, actually, he got 1 less than Almiron, and obviously the winner by far was Trippier, who I think has 6.5. He's just been priced out for me.
Yeah, definitely. Especially like I say, the way they sort of finished the season, they went from the team that we were surprised by under Eddie Howe of being really good defensively and keeping loads of clean sheets to more like the team we thought we'd see from Howe, which is exciting and fun going forward, but are leaky at the back as well. Mm-hmm. So they almost reverted to type a little bit. So I feel like 6.5, yeah, that's definitely too much. Despite his big points haul, like I say, that was very much front-loaded in terms of how the points were won that season. So also worth mentioning, like I've said, I won't have him in, but Wilson got the same amount of points as Pope.
Of course, yeah. We both loved Nick Pope for most of last season, or at least the first half. But yeah, 5.5, I think that is a bridge too far. Top 3 for Newcastle. I'm going to go Wilson as number 1. Isaac is number 2 because I think still love Isaac. And I think as number 3, you're looking at Sven Botman, 4.5 million, centre-back. Don't have him for the start of the season. Loads of people have him for the start of the season, and it will be a disaster for them. He's in 23.4% of teams at the moment. The 6th most owned defender at the moment. Could that start? I'm not sure I would have him. But I think over the course of the season could be a really, really strong option.
I think, yeah, that's probably the same for me. I'll be keeping an eye on Harvey Barnes as well, with how they play with him and how he slots into that team. I think, yeah, Wilson and Isak are the 2 main ones for me as well. If Isak stays fit for a whole year, it just depends how they play them both together again, or do they rotate a little bit? That was always the worry when they were both in sort of their sort of real good bit of form, sort of in the back sort of 8 weeks, 10 weeks of last season. There was always that rotation risk. And if you're saying Botman, I think Burns always worth a shout as well. They ended up on the same amount of points. Burns only in like 3% of teams at the moment. So if you want that differential, go Burn instead.
Yeah, I mean, they're both as good as each other. I think Botman is surely a little bit more nailed down, do you think?
I think Burns, I mean, depending on what signings they make, he had 35 starts last season. So, because he played at left back, didn't he? So he was like this really out of place looking lanky left back, who was originally a centre back when he was at Brighton. So I think we have to mention as well, it's a sad day because Alan St-Maximin has officially left and gone to Saudi Arabia, which does make the league a lot less fun this year.
And a lot more sad. Yeah, that's ruined my Christmas, that has. Oh, well, anyway, let's move on.
Let's cheer you up with Nottingham Forest.
Nottingham Forest, who haven't been paying any of their players and are about to get a massive fine. That it couldn't happen to a nicer set of fans. So on FPL, I'm sure you're going to be going in on their top defender, Serge Aurier.
Yep, definitely.
I was about to make a case, but it's too much of a stretch, even for me. A player that I really like is two actually that I really like are Awoniyi in that forward line. Looked really good at the end of last season. However, 6.5 for Nottingham Forest forward is probably a bit too far. And Johnson, who was really, really good in the latter bit of last season as well, playing just off Awoniyi. And at 6 million as a midfielder, there are worse picks.
Yeah, definitely. There are also rumours that Johnson could be on the move, so worth keeping an eye on him and where he potentially ends up. Gibbs White, I thought, had a fairly good season. He majorly overpriced in terms of the actual transfer fee they paid for him, but he did have a good year. They have also signed Anthony Elanga from Manchester United, who has obviously been in and out of the United side. Not so much last season, the season before, but a 5 million midfielder, if he plays a lot of minutes and they go on a good run at any point, he could be one to keep an eye on. But I think it's Awoniyi, it's Brennan Johnson, and you could make a case that if Hennessy's going to be their first choice keeper, he is your other 4 million if you're rotating them.
Yeah, it does look like, though, that Dean Henderson is probably going to go back there. Or maybe not if they're getting fined £1 million+ pounds. But
yeah, it depends if they're ready to pay him.
Yeah. In terms of the top threes, I think we can do this pretty quickly. I think Johnson just about gets number 1 and Gibbs White number 2, then Awoniyi number 3. However, I won't be getting any of them. Spoiler alert.
I think you should get John Joe Shelby.
Moving swiftly on to a super, super fun team, Sheffield United.
John Lundstrom
is not there.
He's at Celtic.
Brewster.
Are we just saying names now? Is that what we're doing?
Well, Brewster actually plays for Sheffield United, which is probably a good start.
Ollie McBurney.
I mean, McBurney also plays for Sheffield United. Price of 5.5. Who's playing 5.5 for a Sheffield United forward? I don't know here is the honest answer. Any thoughts at all?
Sander Berg, I thought was a good player when he first came into the Sheffield United side. Was it the season they went down or the season before they went down? I can't remember.
They went down because they had the awesome season with Lundstrom, etc. before they went down.
Yeah, so I guess it depends. So it's like you got George Baldock there. I don't know if he starts, but he's another 4 million defender. I don't know. John Egan probably is their main defender. But yeah, I mean, like, I don't know. I just don't know. Austin Trusty. Who the hell are you, mate? Apparently they've signed him from Arsenal.
Yeah, that's a bit of a no-go. I think I can't give a 3 for Sheffield United. I just don't care.
Feels like their squad is really small as well.
Yeah, there are a couple of injuries in the first team and they're in big trouble. Well, it'll be a miracle if they stay up.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much what we're all looking at here. They've actually got some good fixtures at the start of the season, but there's no one you can possibly think about going, yeah, they're worth having in my side.
Let's move swiftly on then to Tottenham Hotspur. And I think we need to have this discussion because it's looking likely as if Kane isn't there. Because it's looking likely that Kane's going to go. In which case, what are the 3 Tottenham assets outside of Harry Kane, who's obviously would be first, that we're looking at? So I think without Kane, Richarlison is a lock-in. He's a no-brainer. You get him straight in FPL. He'll be playing as their striker. They're going to reinvest the Kane money in the defence, not in another forward. So I think Richarlison goes straight into my FPL team when Kane goes. Thoughts?
Yeah, nothing wrong with that. I'm just trying to find the odds on his next club.
It's like 1.6 for Bayern, I think.
Yeah, so like it sounds by all accounts like they're very confident that he's going to go now. So I can find his like goal minutes and stuff. So yeah, you got to assume he's on his way out. So you are right. Richarlison does become more tempting at that point if he's a midfielder that's going to be playing up front. I just hate him though. But
hat trick in pre-season seems to be working really well with Postecoglou. Can we just call him Andrew on this podcast? Because I don't want to bother saying Postecoglou over and over again.
No, I want you to have to call him Postecoglou every time.
So Richarlison seems to fit with Postecoglou ball. But in terms of the way they play, he seems to fit. He's got a hat trick, and he seems to be playing well with Maddison. So it's really weird. Their fullbacks aren't bombing forward. They're kind of holding a line, but that means they create, and they're moving inside, giving Maddison a lot more space to go outside from the inside channel. So that's going to be reflective of how they play for this season. What does that mean for us in FPL? It means Maddison's going to be putting a lot of balls in the box, and the person in the box, which is likely to be Richarlison playing in that central role, is going to be finishing them. Now, don't get me wrong, Maddison would still be a good asset if Kane stays. But if Kane goes, I think Maddison becomes a worse asset because Richarlison isn't as good in the air. But Richarlison becomes a very good asset because he's still going to be playing in that central striker position with James Maddison and Kulusevski behind him. So that's me saying Richarlison is where you go if Kane leaves. And I think that's a really obvious choice. Heung-min Son, I can't see myself buying him in FPL.
No, I was just thinking, I find it really weird that he's the same price as Marcus Rashford.
Yeah, Rashford got like 50 more points than him last season.
That makes no sense to me. I know like Son's price has come down quite a bit from where it was 2 years ago, but
the 2 years beforehand, Son got 258 points and 228 points, both more than Rashford got last season.
Yeah, I guess they don't want to bring his price down too much in one season, which I guess makes sense. But as a coin toss between the two, there's only one winner, isn't there?
Oh, yeah, I agree. It's Heung-min Son next.
An interesting one I like is an interesting signing was Manor Solomon, who had that little spell at Fulham last season. He's coming on a free transfer, and he's a 5.5. And if he gets game time, I feel like that could be a very good bargain.
Agreed. So my dad is an avid Fulham fan, watched him closely. What he said was brilliant for the first 4 games or so, but then he was a complete one-trick pony, and opposition teams figured him out very, very quickly, and he was completely useless after that. So I guess a bit like Matoma, except you can evidently stop Solomon, because after 4 games for Fulham, he did nothing else for the rest of the season. So potentially, but I'm not making any judgments yet, but I'd err on the side of caution.
Yeah, no, I definitely. He's not someone that's going to be in your team at the start of the season, but I think one to keep an eye on.
I think with Spurs players, though, looking at their fixtures, they've got Brentford, Manchester United, Bournemouth, Burnley, and Sheffield United. And then in game week 6 and 7, they've got Arsenal away and Liverpool at home. So you don't want to be wasting a transfer in those first 5 game weeks, bringing a Spurs player in. What that means is if you're going to own a Spurs player, you have to do it from the start of the season. So I think it is someone you need to just make a call on. And I think that call has to be no, for at least for the first part of the season.
Yeah, I think you're right. I don't know, unless you want to go Richarlison when Kane does leave, because you've got those two relatively tricky. The way Brentford are playing at the moment, maybe not so much. Then United, but then it's Bournemouth, Burnley, Sheffield United, and those 3. If he is going to be their main striker, I think it could be worth it.
He will have a lot of fun against those defenses, I think.
Yeah. So we'll obviously, a lot will come out in the wash over the next week. So we'll obviously, I think we'll try and do a podcast as late in the week as possible. Maybe we'll even do a live podcast next week, like Thursday night or something like that, or Friday before the first game.
That sounds exciting. Yeah, we can see if we can do that. Okay. If we're going to pick 3 from Spurs, I'm picking Richarlison. I'm picking Madison. And actually, I'll go back on what I said. I'm picking Heung-min Son because I think he could be good at some point in the season. I'm not interested in any of their defensive players at all. They will leak goals. So I think it's got to be those midfield slots.
Yeah, I'm gonna go Richarlison, Madison. I don't want to go for Son, so I'm just gonna pick
Pedro
Emerson
Porro.
Royale.
Pedro
Emerson
Porro.
Royale. No,
Pedro
I
Porro.
can't. No, because he's 0.5 more than Emerson. So I don't know who's going to start. I don't really care either because I'm not going to have any of them. So Emerson Royale.
Let's have a chat about.
Do we have to?
We do. So I think you're really, really going to struggle this season.
Oh, Harry Winks has signed for Leicester. Didn't know that.
Didn't you? Oh.
No, didn't have a clue.
Happened like so early, like ages ago, 10 million or so, I think.
Yeah, that's probably why I forgot because I don't care.
So West Ham. Jared Bowen actually in the second half of last season was much better. So in the whole season he got 6 goals and 9 assists. But in the first, before that World Cup, before game week 16, it was only like 1 goal and 2 assists. So and that's second part of the season. He really picked it up and did much better. Nothing on the season before where he got 206 points was an absolute menace. But I just think with the Europa League now this season, it's similar to the Conference League. You've got a really small squad. You don't look like you're going to sign anyone to replace Rice. It's absolutely ridiculous. Your owner's getting arrested for being a nonce.
We should probably legally say that we don't know that that's true.
Your owner's probably getting arrested. Yeah, I don't feel very hopeful for West Ham this season as a neutral.
Yeah, it would be nice to sign someone. Like we are a week away, just over a week away from our opening game. We've sold our best player and signed no one. And like rumors coming out left, right, and centre about potential players leaving. Antonio could go to Saudi. Scamacca could go back to Italy. If we could just sign someone, I'd be happy.
It's just going to be like Danny Ings and Paqueta passing the ball to each other on the halfway line until they give up and walk off the pitch.
Sounds great.
From an FPL standpoint, is there anywhere we can invest in West Ham? So Areola is the 4.0 likely starting keeper, is going to be in. He's actually the highest owned keeper right now. So I think that's a really, really good pick. Outside of that, I still think there's potential with Jared Bowen. I think he's still a really, really good player. He proven he isn't a one-trick pony. Not bad opening fixtures. So Bournemouth, Chelsea, Brighton, Luton. Then you've got Man City and Liverpool. So you may be losing.
Easy 6 points there then.
So you may be losing Man City. You may be losing Haaland for that fixture. But I struggle to see where I would go with West Ham.
Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it, to really find where you're going to invest in them at the moment. I think Areola, he's in my side at the moment, just because I think as a 4 starting goalkeeper, and he is a good goalkeeper. As long as he is starting, I'm sure we'll have a bit more of an idea next week when sort of those late rumours start to come out about where you're going into the season. Other than that, the only ones I would suggest are Bowen, and it's hard to say without any strikers, really, who we're going to... I would go... I wouldn't go for 2 West Ham midfielders, but I fucking love Lucas Paqueta. I think he really started to come into his own in the last couple of months of last season.
He's not having that forward position, though. He's like a CDM role, especially now Rice has gone as well. He's playing more as a CDM.
He's not a CDM. He's a box to box, but in those last sort of 2 to 3 months of the season, he really came into his own. Got the assist in the Conference League final. Scored a worldy goal against Liverpool. I feel like he was starting to come into his own. And with more time with the team, I feel like hopefully he really starts to kick on.
Perhaps. I think if I'm going 3, I'm going Areola, then Bowen, then Danny Ings, because I have faith and I love Danny Ings. Still was your top scoring forwards on FPL last season?
Yeah, he was. Yeah. A vast majority of those points were scored for Aston Villa. So that's one thing to mention. Skamaka actually scored more goals per minute than any West Ham player last season. That's one thing to consider.
He's desperate to leave. I don't see why any Premier League team would sign players from Italy, because they're all just constantly desperate to leave after like a year. And if you come from Italy to England, of course you want to leave. Like in Italy, you've got sun, you've got nice wine, you've got ice cream. Here, you've just got football hooligans and Richmond FC. And I've changed my mind. Richmond, go Richmond!
So what you're telling me is, come January, Sandro Tonali is going to be begging to leave Newcastle.
Wouldn't surprise me. He'll be desperate to go to Barcelona. So, shall we round up shall we round ourselves off with talking about Wolverhampton Wanderers? And I don't want to make any jokes because Wolves are going down.
Yeah, you're just like, none of them.
I'm going to make a case. Podence has looked good in pre-season, was their best player from in midfield last season, 92 FPL points, comes in at 5.5 on FPL. At the moment, I'm debating between him and Enciso as my 5.5 player.
Well, that's just fucking stupid.
It's not an intelligent debate, but if we're looking at Wolves fixtures, they're away to Man U, then at home to Brighton, but then they've got Everton and Crystal Palace, both winnable games. I'm really trying to polish a turd here because then they've got
I can hear the bottom of the barrel being scraped.
Yeah, this is horrendous. With Wolves, I think they're going down, so I'm not going near any of them. Jose Sarr, 148 FPL points, gets lots of saves, 5.0. You can do worse. And I think that's the nicest you can say about any Wolves player. You can do worse.
What about getting Matt Doherty back in, just for the good old days of when he was ripping up and getting loads of points as Wolves right back before he went and ruined his career at Spurs?
4.5 million. At the moment, one of my 4.5 million spots in my defence is going to James Tarkowski. So, I'm not super opposed to it.
I love the fact that since he went to Spurs for 15 mil, his 2 following transfers have been for nothing. Yeah. He went to Atleti for 6 months, which obviously went really fucking well, because now he's been moved on another free transfer.
Yeah, I mean, just absolutely bonkers. And he was really good for Spurs for that season and a half ago, was it?
He had a good run.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's never got back to the heights that he had as a Wolves right wing back, bombing along and racking up points for fun.
It's a shame, isn't it? So
I wouldn't say it's that much of a shame.
That concludes our game week preview, or our FPL preview. Very, very quickly, why don't you run through your draft at the moment?
Do I have to?
Yes, because we're going to dig into this in a lot more detail in our preview pod when we speak next week. We're going to be making last-minute panic transfers. It's going to be fun, but let's run through where we're at now to see where our heads are at.
My head is that I hate this. I hate this squad. So my current goalkeepers are Areola and Onana. Defenders are White, Roberts, Chilwell, Stones, and Kilman, because I thought Kilman was going to be getting a transfer, and it seems to have completely gone dead on that front. And Buemo, Enciso, Diaz, De Bruyne, Bowen, and then Haaland, Jackson, Darwin.
Ooh. Jackson over Nkunku. Interesting.
Nkunku's got, he went off injured, didn't he? So, I don't know who's going to play. And Jackson was $500,000 cheaper, and he's more of your out-and-out striker than Nkunku, who's more of a number 10. So that was my logic there. But pointless discussing it because they're probably not going to be there this time next week.
I was going to say it's probably going to change, isn't it? So mine at the moment is Onana in goal with Areola on the bench, sitting with 3 defenders, Estupinian, Saliba, and Trent, and my 2 on the bench are Mings and Tarkovsky. Then midfield 5 of Bruno, Mitoma, Rashford, Saka, and then Sisco. And then up top, I've got Darwin and Haaland. So a bench is Areola, Tarkovsky, Mings, and Mbama for West Ham. You know, that well-known.
Mubama.
Mubama, yeah, that really well-known player.
He's had a very good pre-season. It wouldn't surprise me if he gets a bit of game time this year.
Well, there you go.
Especially if we have no other strikers.
But you know what? I really, really like that starting 11 for game week 1. And then Cisco can drop to the bench for Tyrone Mings for moving forwards, and it can be a 4-4-2. I'm really, really liking that starting 11. So it's got 3 Man U, 3 Brighton, 2 Liverpool, 2 Arsenal, and Haaland. But I think those are the teams you probably want to be owning in FPL. So I really like that lineup as it stands at the moment. That being said, there'll be 100 changes between now and our new pod.
At least.
100%. Right, that is all we've got time for today. Thank you all for listening. That concludes our Premier League previews. We're going to do a late podcast next week, probably a live one. So jump on and give us all lots of abuse.
And we will be doing our pre-season predictions as well, just like we did last year when I blew you out of the water with my predictions. So hopefully more of the same. That was more important than winning the FPL war, I think. So I was the real winner last season.
Neither of us did well. If anything, we both lost.
Nah, I definitely won.
We both lost. Good chat.
I predicted West Ham to go the furthest in Europe, and I know we drew with City, but...
You got the moral win there. I accept you got the moral win. Cool. Well, thank you, everyone. We will speak to you all next week.